Have you ever had one of those nights where you do everything right on paper? You get into bed at a reasonable hour, you close your eyes, you sleep for a solid 8 hours, and yet when the alarm goes off, you feel like you've just been hit by a truck. You drag yourself out of bed, staring at the mirror, wondering how it is biologically possible to be this exhausted after being completely unconscious.
It is one of the most universally frustrating human experiences. You feel betrayed by your own body. You put in the time, you laid in the dark, but the math just doesn't seem to add up. And the reason it doesn't add up is based on a massive misconception we all have about what sleep actually is. We tend to think of sleep as an off switch. You power down the machine, the screen goes black, and the battery simply recharges. But physiologically, sleep is not a uniform state of nothingness. It is an incredibly active, shifting biological landscape.
An active landscape. That completely changes the framing because if we view sleep as an off switch, being unconscious should equal being recovered. But if it's a landscape, it means we can be unconscious while our body is still doing heavy lifting. And that brings us to the core of what we are unpacking today. There is a specific metric, a very specific window in the middle of the night that exposes exactly what your body is doing behind the scenes. We are talking about the 4 a.m. resting heart rate. Out of all the data points we can track today, why is 4 a.m. the magic number?
Because 4 a.m. is the ultimate low stimulation window. Think about it. At 4 a.m., you aren't answering emails, you aren't eating, you aren't exercising, you aren't consciously stressing about your mortgage or your next meeting. The environment is entirely neutral. In theory, this is the exact moment when your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and recover system, should be completely running the show. Your heart rate and blood pressure follow a circadian rhythm, heavily regulated by the brain's internal clock and autonomic nervous system. By 4 a.m., your heart rate should be at its absolute baseline.
So it's the purest baseline we have. It's the one moment where our conscious choices can't interfere with the data.
Exactly. But 4 a.m. is also incredibly fascinating because of where it sits in the sleep cycle. It is often the transition point. You are moving out of those deep, physically restorative sleep stages, drifting toward later REM sleep, and your biology is just beginning the very early, invisible preparations for waking up. REM sleep alone can cause slight heart rate spikes because the brain becomes highly active, almost mimicking wakefulness. But when we see an unexpectedly high resting heart rate at 4 a.m., a number that stays elevated through the night, it reveals something profound. It exposes hidden physiological load.
Hidden physiological load. I love that term. It's like thinking your computer is asleep because the screen is dark, but the internal fans are spinning at maximum speed because it's running massive, complex software updates in the background. You can't see it, but the processor is burning hot.
That is the perfect analogy. You might be unconscious, but your body is working overtime. Your organs are pulling a night shift. And this completely shatters the illusion that time spent in bed equals time spent recovering. I want to share a perfect example of this. There is a fascinating case study involving a founder at a metabolic hack center. This is someone who is highly optimized, tracks everything, and generally has excellent baseline metrics on his OXYZEN ring. Normally, his 4 a.m. resting heart rate sits beautifully between 54 and 58 beats per minute. His heart rate variability, or HRV, is stable. He gets deep, consistent sleep, and he wakes up feeling focused and calm.
The holy grail of mornings. So, what happened to break the pattern?
Real life happened. He had an incredibly stressful day at the office, followed by a late, heavy dinner and a couple of glasses of wine to unwind. He still went to bed on time. He still slept for nearly 7 hours. But when he looked at his data the next morning, the landscape was entirely different. His 4 a.m. resting heart rate wasn't 54. It was hovering between 68 and 74 beats per minute. His HRV had tanked. His sleep architecture was highly fragmented, and he woke up dealing with severe brain fog, sugar cravings, and absolutely zero patience.
And I can already guess his reaction. But I slept for 7 hours.
Precisely. He took the data to his doctor, completely baffled, pointing out that he got his 7 hours of unconsciousness. And the doctor looked at him and said something that I think completely redefines how we should look at health. The doctor said, "Yes, you slept for 7 hours, but your body didn't recover for 7 hours, it worked for 7 hours.
Wow, it worked for 7 hours. That gives me chills. Honestly, it completely shifts the responsibility back onto our waking choices. We often treat sleep like a magic eraser. We think we can push ourselves to the absolute limit, eat a heavy meal at 9 p.m., drink alcohol to artificially sedate our stressed out brains, and then rely on sleep to just wash it all away. But the 4 a.m. heart rate is essentially a biological receipt.
A biological receipt. That is exactly what it is. It is the itemized bill for your daytime choices handed to your nervous system in the middle of the night. You can lie to yourself about how stressed you are. You can tell yourself that the late night wine helps you relax, but you cannot lie to your autonomic nervous system. The 4 a.m. heart rate showed the exact cost of the late night stress, the alcohol metabolism, the heavy digestion, and the poor circadian timing long before the founder consciously understood why he felt so terrible.
Let's dig into that itemized bill, because I think people need to know exactly what they are paying for. What are the specific things that force the body to work the night shift? You mentioned alcohol, which is incredibly ironic considering how many people use a glass of wine specifically as a sleep aid.
The alcohol paradox is one of the biggest traps in modern sleep hygiene. People use it because it is a central nervous system depressant. It helps you lose consciousness faster, but losing consciousness is not the same as entering restorative sleep. Even moderate alcohol intake forces the liver to prioritize metabolizing the toxins. This causes a massive autonomic stress response. Your heart rate stays elevated, your body temperature rises, and your HRV plummets in a very clear, dose-dependent pattern. Your brain is sedated, but your cardiovascular system is running a marathon.
So the nightcap is actually just a biochemical alarm clock going off inside your bloodstream. What else is driving that 4 a.m. spike?
Late, heavy meals are a massive culprit, especially anything high in sugar or unhealthy fats. Digestion is an incredibly energy-intensive process. If you eat a massive steak and a bowl of ice cream at 9 p.m. and go to bed at 10 p.m., your core body temperature cannot drop. And a drop in core temperature is a strict biological requirement for entering deep sleep. Instead, your gastrointestinal tract is working furiously, sending blood flow to the gut, keeping the heart rate elevated.
It makes total sense. We're asking the body to perform heavy industrial labor while simultaneously asking it to shut down for maintenance. It's impossible. What about the psychological side? Does unresolved stress show up at 4 a.m.?
Absolutely, and this is where it gets deeply psychological. Unresolved emotional arousal keeps the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight mechanism, engaged. If you are doom-scrolling negative news, arguing with a partner, or just obsessing over tomorrow's to-do list right before bed, your brain perceives a threat. Evolutionarily, if there is a threat, it is not safe to enter deep, paralyzing sleep. So the brain keeps the heart rate elevated, keeping you in lighter, more fragmented sleep stages so you can wake up quickly if the predator attacks.
The predator being an unread email from our boss. It's fascinating and a little tragic how our ancient biology is completely mismatched with our modern environment. We are triggering life or death physiological responses from a glowing rectangle in our hands, and the wearable data is just exposing the mismatch. But this brings up a really important philosophical point about the era of quantified self. We have all these devices now. We have the rings, the watches, the straps. We are swimming in data. But are we actually getting healthier, or are we just getting more anxious about our metrics?
That is the defining question of the wearable tech industry right now. And it's why the OXYZEN philosophy is so crucial. The hard truth is this: wearables do not improve health. Interpretation does. If you just look at a high 4 a.m. heart rate and panic, you are only adding to your stress load. The data is utterly useless if it just serves as a daily judgment of your failures. The goal is not to chase a perfect number. The goal is to understand the pattern.
So how do we shift from staring at the data in a panic to actually interpreting it? What is the question we should be asking ourselves when we wake up and see that elevated 4 a.m. heart rate?
The most useful question you can ask is, what did I do yesterday that my nervous system was still processing at 4 a.m.? It's an exercise in reverse engineering. You don't obsess over one bad night. You look for the trends across 7 to 14 days. You track the 4 a.m. heart rate alongside your HRV, your sleep fragmentation, and your body temperature. And then you correlate that with your behaviors. Did you eat late? Did you have alcohol? Were you dehydrated? Did you do an intense HIIT workout at 8 p.m. that left your core temperature elevated?
It's about becoming a detective of your own biology. Instead of feeling guilty, you get curious. Okay, let's talk interventions. If someone is listening to this and they realize their body has been working the night shift for the last 5 years, how do they hand in their resignation? What are the actionable steps to actually lower that 4 a.m. metric and get into deep recovery?
The interventions are surprisingly simple, but they require discipline because they go against the grain of modern convenience. First, finish your dinner earlier. Give your body at least 3 to 4 hours to digest before lying down. Second, aggressively protect your sleep environment. Cool the bedroom down. As we discussed, a drop in core temperature is non-negotiable for deep sleep. Third, hydrate earlier in the day so you aren't chugging water at night and waking up to use the bathroom, which fragments sleep.
And I imagine we need to have a serious conversation about alcohol and screens.
Without a doubt, avoiding alcohol close to bedtime is perhaps the single most effective way to lower your resting heart rate, and reducing late-night screen stimulation is vital for signaling to your brain that the day is actually over. But there is also a morning intervention that people forget. Getting morning sunlight into your eyes sets the circadian timer for the entire day. It anchors your biology so that 16 hours later, your brain knows exactly when to release melatonin and begin the shutdown sequence.
It's incredible how connected everything is. The morning sunlight dictates the 4 a.m. heart rate. The dinner dictates the recovery. We tend to view our days in these isolated boxes, morning, noon, night, but our biology is just one continuous, unbroken thread. What you do at 2 p.m. echoes at 2 a.m.
Exactly. A low 4 a.m. heart rate is the ultimate biological complement. It suggests your body successfully transitioned away from the demands of the day and entered a state of profound repair. But a high 4 a.m. heart rate is a warning light on the dashboard. It's your body whispering to you, trying to get your attention before that hidden biological load turns into chronic burnout, metabolic dysfunction, or illness.
It really makes you rethink the entire concept of rest. We treat rest as an absence of activity, but true recovery is a highly orchestrated, incredibly delicate biological performance. And if we don't set the stage properly, the performance can't happen. We might be lying in the dark, eyes closed, dreaming away, but beneath the surface, the engine is still redlining.
And that is the ultimate takeaway. You can't cheat the system. You can mask your fatigue with caffeine, you can mask your stress with alcohol, but the nervous system keeps the score. The 4 a.m. metric strips away all the modern coping mechanisms and shows you the raw truth of your physiological state.
It's a humbling thought. The next time you wake up exhausted after a full night in bed, instead of blaming the mattress or the alarm clock, it might be time to look at the receipt. What did you ask your body to process in the dark? We spend a third of our lives asleep, assuming we are healing. But perhaps the most important question we can ask ourselves moving forward is, are we actually resting or are we just unconscious?